If you've ever tried learning a new language, you know the feeling, right? You spend hours memorizing these long lists of words and then poof, a week later, they're gone. But what if the problem isn't your brain? What if it's the entire method we've been taught? Well, today, we're going to dive into a totally different way to make new words actually stick. For good.
So, the whole idea behind this new approach can be summed up in one kind of shocking statement from language learning expert Steve Kaufman. He says, "Don't try to remember vocabulary." I know, that sounds completely backwards. Isn't remembering the whole point of learning?
Exactly. That's the question on everyone's mind. For years, we've been conditioned to think that learning vocabulary is the act of memorization. So if that's all wrong, what on earth are we supposed to do instead? Well, before we get to the new way, let's first tear down the old one. Okay, first things first, we have to talk about what I call the memorization myth. This is that classic idea that if you just drill, say, 10 words into your head every single day, you'll magically become fluent. But as we're about to see, that whole approach is just deeply flawed. Really, it all comes down to force versus flow. The old school method is all about force, trying to hammer a few words into your brain. The better way, the exposure method, is about flow. It's about letting hundreds of words just wash over you naturally by reading and listening. You're not fighting to remember, you're just absorbing.
I love this analogy for why memorizing lists just doesn't work. Think of it like grocery shopping. You go to the food chapter in your textbook and you put a few words in your shopping bag. Then you head over to the sports chapter and add a few more. At the end of the day, what do you have? A bag full of words that have no connection to each other. They're in the bag, sure, but they're not really in your head where it counts.
So, if we're not supposed to be shopping for words, what's the alternative? We have to change our mindset completely. We need to stop being word collectors and start being word detectives. This means you treat every new word not as an item to grab, but as a clue to be investigated.
And think about it. A good detective has to be selective, right? You can't chase down every single lead. It's the same with words. When you keep seeing a word pop up over and over again and you have no idea what it means, that's your clue. That's when you put on your Sherlock Holmes hat and start investigating. It's not about quantity. It's about going after the words that are obviously important.
So, what does a detective look for? Well, your case file for a new word should have these 4 key things. First, what's its core meaning? Simple enough. Second, what's its word form? Is it a noun, a verb? Third, how do you actually pronounce it? And fourth, and this is so crucial, what other words does it like to hang out with? That's called a collocation. When you have these 4 pieces of information, you finally start to understand the word's true personality.
Okay, so we've busted the big myth and we put on our detective hats. But now we need an actual system to put this all into practice. Let's take a look at what a smarter, more effective learning cycle really looks like.
Man, here it is. The most important thing to realize is that this isn't a straight line. It's a circle, a continuous loop. It all starts with discovery, where you just stumble across new words in the wild, maybe in an article or a movie. Then comes practice, where you actively try to use those words yourself. And finally, you review them, which just means you encounter them again and again. Every single time a word goes through this loop, it gets locked in just a little bit deeper.
All right, that's the theory. Now for the really fun part. What are the actual practical techniques you can use inside this cycle to make words truly, finally stick? Okay, just look at this data for a second. It's from a really fascinating experiment. Someone memorized a list of words using nothing but pure repetition. The next day, they could only remember 12% of them. 12! But then they took a different list and used a simple visualization technique, and their recall shot up to 50%. This just proves it. How you learn is so much more important than just repeating things over and over.
So, how do you get that massive exposure we talked about? The best part is, it can actually be fun. Just read something you enjoy every single day. It can be articles, comics, whatever. Listen to podcasts on your commute. Watch videos. Play word games. All of these things feed your brain new words in a totally natural, low-pressure way.
Now, for more active practice, there's this amazing technique called spaced repetition. The idea is basically genius. Instead of cramming, the system shows you a word right at the exact moment you're about to forget it. It's this perfectly timed little nudge that helps kick the word from your short-term memory into your long-term memory. A ton of the language apps you already use are built on this exact principle.
Seriously, if you only take one single thing away from all of this, please let it be this. As language coach Lindy Boatsa says, learn the words in context
Please, this is my pet peeve, and she is so right. A word learned in isolation is like a single puzzle piece. You have no idea how it fits into the bigger picture. But when you learn it in a sentence, you see exactly how it works.
And here's a simple, maybe even old school, but incredibly powerful tool, a word notebook. But here's the key. Don't just write down the word and its definition. The real magic is writing your own example sentence using it. Make it personal. Make it funny. Make it true for you. That personal connection is what really makes it stick.
So we've gone through the myths, the methods, and the tools. But let's zoom out for a minute. What is the real, ultimate goal of all of this? Because it's about something so much deeper than just knowing a lot of words.
Let's be really clear about what we're aiming for. We need to get away from this idea of just cramming words into our heads. The real goal isn't memorization at all, it's intuition. That's the endgame. That's that magical point where the language finally starts to feel natural.
And that's what intuition is all about. You know that feeling when you're speaking and the right word just appears? You didn't have to think about a grammar rule or a definition you memorized. It just feels right. That feeling is the payoff. It's the result of all that exposure and meaningful practice. It is the true sign of fluency.
So, I'll just leave you with this final question. We spend so much time and energy trying to force words into our brains. But what if the secret this whole time wasn't about trying harder at all? What if it was just about learning smarter?